I'm going to kill you, Father.
Certainly a startling opening line.
So do you know who it was?
Somebody with a grudge against the church, obviously.
Yeah, that could be half the country.
Could I have a word?
Hope we don't get locked in here. We'll have to make love to keep warm.
Nobody around here has a bad word to say about him. Makes you wonder what he's hiding.
Killing a priest on a Sunday. That'll be a good one.
Well, we were chatting in when we finished in Connemara on the Guard. We went for a drink that night, and we were talking about things in general and the idea of a good priest. I think John had been thinking about the notion of a good priest, and I think there had been some recent, revelations about people being blamed in the wrong and stuff, and being accused of paedophilia and things like that, where it wasn't actually true. And we were just talking about how hideous it would be, and John said, okay, if he'd had it in mind anyway, if he wrote it, would I do it? So that's where it started. So we were kind of hooked up from the very beginning, which was, it was very exciting for me anyway, and so that's how it.
But then you wake up in the morning with a hangover and you have to write the script. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But then I'd always liked the hook of Hitchcock's I Confess, Montgomery Clift film, where he's told something in the confessional but he can't reveal it. Which is kind of a bit of a cliche, but it's sometimes I like taking a cliche and trying to twist it or play around with it. Yeah. So then you've got the character, a good priest, and you've got the kind of the hook, a thriller sort of hook. And then it kind of just launched itself from there, really.
Well, just the idea of a good priest, Brendan. You're known quite a bit in America for playing villains, and John, like writing a character who is so intrinsically good. Is it almost cathartic, or is it kind of a new experience to play and to write someone who is that good?
Well, to me, I don't know, Brendan. It's not cathartic to me as a writer to do it, but obviously most films are kind of driven. Usually by in a blockbuster movie, they're usually driven by the villain, not the hero. Yeah. Or there's a film where the lead character is an anti-hero. People who are genuinely good don't usually drive a movie forward, because it's kind of, I don't know, they're different, because those sorts of characters in a way come across as being po-faced or patronising in some way. So obviously the solution was you have the good priest, but you have virtually everyone around him be bad. Or conflicted, or suffering in some way. So it's the people he meets who kind of drive the events forward, and then a lot of the time in the movie he's reacting to what's going on. Yeah. And then it's just finding those beats all the way through, where you dig into his personal story, so you load layer upon layer. So. He's not just a priest who entered the seminary when he was 16 or 17. He's a man who had a full life beforehand, So he's not one of those patronising characters. He's someone who can generally speak with authority, and he has integrity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if cathartic is the word for me, but it was certainly a challenge. I think I can't remember what the opposite of cathartic is, if there is an opposite. I don't even know what it means, but it's like almost as if it did. I found it tough in a way that I found very few things tough. I remember doing The General, and John Boorman more or less challenged me to get into a place where I didn't particularly want to go in terms of the dark side of things. And I found that it opened a lot of doors for me in terms of like what I expected of myself, in terms of my acting and stuff like that, in terms of what I was trying to do. But there's a payback. I mean, there is a payback where you start visiting those places in your head. This was the very opposite of that, where you had to, it had an odd connection with childhood for me. Like, I realise now maybe that there was a particular Christian brother, Pat Grogan, who was a good man in my primary school years, who had a huge influence on me. That was part of it. But there was also, I think, I found in this one a kind of an accessing of a belief in a purity of goodness, in terms that would have been maybe, in a sense, like childlike, and the notion that he's there trying to preserve that in some way. There's suffer little children and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why, but it brought me back into a place when I was quite young, in terms of like, it's an easy one. You love God, and God is love, and that's it. It's easy. Yeah. So that like, for me, accessing that, and then like I had this scary moment that I kind of talk about quite a lot, which is putting on the vestments the first time, and it felt as if Jesus, like John called it a samurai thing. You're basically putting on the armor to protect something that's good and beautiful. And like, for me, then it became even beyond Catholicism and stuff like that. In terms of the movie, for me, and the meaning of it had more to do with trying to lay that emphasis on keeping the faith in goodness as an entity. You know, as not an entity, but as a force. You know, that's something that you aspire towards. That optimism, all of these things, hope. You know, faith, hope, and charity, I guess. Yeah. That all of those things are basically what everybody appears to be losing in this world that we have. You know, in that all those other characters are coming with various different challenges, emotional challenges, psychological challenges, you know, intellectual challenges, accusations of collusion with whatever, with all the corruption that's going on. All these things are attacks on this central notion that life is actually worth believing in. And like, so that's what it, for me, it did become quite, as I say, cathartic isn't the word, because I didn't really feel...
you felt worse.
Because I did actually feel worse at the end of it. I felt very, not worse. I felt it is ultimately cathartic once you see the movie is, and hopefully when if the audience responds to it, that's where the catharsis is. But in the actual shooting of it, I found it quite difficult to kind of get back to myself after it.
I was just wondering, the priest character, he kind of assigns blame or accepts blame for so much, everything in the town, be it like even economic blame in the country at the moment. Has there been any feedback from actual priests or anyone like in the religious community who have said either positive or negative?
I haven't heard anything, but I think I haven't heard anything from anyone. But I think when people see the movie, yeah,
we should have did what we did with the guard. We should have done what we did with the guard.
Well, we had the screening for a lot of guards, and they loved it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but I guess he is the hero, though. So
yeah, no, it'd be interesting.
Would the church love it?
We should have done it. Yeah, we should have.
But I mean, the thing is, it's not. It's sort of to me, it's not an anti-religion film. It's an anti-authority film.
Yeah.
Any organisation that tries to tell you what to do, it's anti all that. So, you know, it can be the police force, or it can be, you know, the church or whatever, it can be the government.
Yeah, but the dichotomy is that, like, this is a good man attempting to do good things. So how do you, I mean, like, for me, what I love about the film is that it asks a lot of questions without preaching the answer.
And without judging people.
Without judging the people on either side, really. I mean, you can make your own judgments about what's going on. But for me, there was an odd thing that, like, it came through that in the end, even though these people were doing everything they could possibly do to break this man, they did not want him to be broken. Ultimately, they would have loved to be reconverted in some odd way. Yeah. I mean, they all still go to Mass. Yeah. Or most of them. So that of itself, you know, that there's a kind of a thing, there's a kind of a yearning, and I think it's one of the great things about the film too, like that there's a vacuum when this man, like, you know, this man acts as so many things within that society. You know, he's such a sponge for so much grief and pain, and he takes it on himself to such an extent. Like, how do you substitute that, and what do you substitute it with? Nobody has given, you know, any, like, that's the question you're left with, I guess. You're left with a vacuum in the sense that if we lose that, what do we substitute?
Yeah, because people are always going to seek spirituality of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a sentient human being, you know, why are we here? So that's always going to be there. Whether religion will always be here is another matter.
Yeah. John, Brendan, thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you.
I need to speak to you, Father.
Take a pew, literally.
From the writer and director of The Guard.
He's saying I should go to the police.
Nobody around here has a bad word to say about him. Makes you wonder what he's hiding.
A wickedly funny black comedy. Nothing short of a masterpiece.
If you say so.
Brendan Gleeson. Calvary. In cinemas, April 11th.